Power on.
Earth, 2019. Dominant species, human. Galactic potential rating, 0. Cultural affiliation, combination of government and global businesses, corporatism, legacy institution. Species still conservative, superstitious, and religious. Ecologically illiterate, largely unaware of cosmological foundation of love. Level of technological dependence is disturbingly higher than the galactic standard. Species distracted and behavior controlled by technology companies. System error. Advanced concepts detected beyond normal human levels. New galactic potential rating, over 9,000. Transmission type, podcast. Host, the Man of Tomorrow. Brian Sovryn. Source, Sovryn Tech.
The Golden Stallion just coming off. Just coming out. Just coming. Wait. No, don't mean that. But just coming out of seeing the 40th anniversary of Alien, Ridley Scott's Alien. Ridley Scott is basically the short answer I give, whenever I'm asked who my favorite director is. That's not the actual answer. My actual answer is Paul W.S. Anderson. Ridley Scott, though, is at like number 2, or they're kind of neck and neck. Ridley Scott, let's just say it, when you're the guy that makes Blade Runner, Gladiator, and Alien, just to name a few, what more do you need to do in your career? So, anyway, just coming out, they did a 40th anniversary release of that, which is ironic considering that also just a couple weeks ago, or hell, was that last weekend? Got out of seeing Star Trek the Motion Picture for its 40th anniversary, which was a fine and dandy thing. But we're going to talk about that later. No need to get into that right now. But I will say this. This isn't exactly true for me, but this may be true for you. You don't realize just how horrible something is or how bad things have gotten, perhaps, until you've seen the genuine article, right? Like when you go and see an amazing film, and both Ellen and I went and saw this today. When you go and see an amazing film like Alien, and I don't want to speak for Ellen on this, though she might not disagree, but you can't help but realize just how fucking horrible modern movies are. Ellen, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, woo! All right, there she is. Yeah, and, this is something where I don't think we needed to see what we're going to open up with. Not opening up with the foreplay, actually going to open up with, well, I guess it'll be blockchain this week in blockchain, right? That's the usual segment we do. We're going to open up with that because it's got a hot story coming off. That it's not a case of where, you don't need to see the sour to appreciate the sweet. It's not like that. We already knew that this was going to be shit, and we already know what the gold is, right? There was no expectation that this is going to be a great thing. But it seems pretty clear that most of the major partners involved with what we're about to talk about have realized, whoa, this is a raw deal. And what are we talking about here? Well, give me a moment to enjoy a little Earl Grey tea before we get into that. Woo, you're not supposed to have like dead audio or anything at any given moment, but you'll pardon me while I have a sip. You know what? Actually, this mug, D-Generation X, it says on it. 2 words. Suck it. Woo! How about that? Well, you know what? That's a great segue, actually. Before we get into our story here, if you want to suck it, you got to make sure that thing is rock hard. And you know what I'm talking about. Boys, gals, Z's, MBs. You know what I mean. Why don't you take some Blue Chew? All right, Blue Chew, Sovryn Tech sponsor, BLUE CHEW. Blue because it's the blue pill. Chew because you chew it. In fact, it's the first chewable that has the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis. So you know when it's time to get rock hard and in bed so that you can rock hard. Woo! And, well, like DX would say, 2 words, suck it. You have that Blue Chew ready to go for you. Again, same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis. This is going to make for a good time. You're going to be going all night long with that action. I don't know if you want to watch Alien before you take some Blue Chew, or maybe take some Blue Chew while watching Alien. I mean, there's a packed theater where we were, so it's not like any, wild times were happening there. But I can tell you that Blue Chew can cause a wild time for me. So you want to jump on this. Get your hands on, and look, you don't have to go to the doctors. You don't have to do anything like that. This is all very discreet. You just go to that website. BlueChew.com. Here's the deal. I want you to use the code TECH, T-E-C-H, just like Sovryn Tech. Use the code TECH, okay? And when you do that, you're going to get your first order for free. You're only going to pay $5 for shipping. Can you go wrong with that action? Of course you can't. I know I can't. Woo! So go for it. BlueChew.com. Use that code TECH again. BlueChew.com. BlueChew.com. And we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Now, one more sip out of this wonderful DX cup. I have a lot of great mugs. Ellen, would you say I have a lot of great mugs?
Fuck yeah.
See, I do. I have great mugs. Phil Collins mugs, Dream Theater mugs, NWO mugs. In fact, I just looked to my right. There's that. I need to get some new mugs. Boy, wrestling. The conversation I could have around that right now. It's a shitty time to be a fan of a lot of things. It's a shitty time. One thing it is not a shitty time to be a fan of is wrestling, but we're not going to talk about that because we have tech news. We're going to get into some blockchain and Bitcoin stuff right now. Okay, we've got to talk about that, but God damn it, is it a great time to be a wrestling fan. All I'm going to say is I'm going to say 6 letters. NWA, AEW. That's all I'm going to say about it. Now, let's move on and let's talk about, drum roll please, Libra. Woo! Collective laughter from all around while I have another sip of tea. So Libra, we talked about this when it was getting announced, and in fact, Libra is the culmination of something that I had done investigative journalism on, which I've done often for Facebook, including when I broke the news that they were hiring and were working on BCIs, that being brain-computer interfaces. The other thing that I did some investigative journalism on was when Circle, the company, the at one point Bitcoin company Circle, and Facebook were in cahoots, having meetings, the whole thing. Now, what was that all about? Was Facebook going to implement Bitcoin perhaps in the Facebook Messenger, which, by the way, is a payment processor of a type? Were they going to do that? That was the initial speculation on my part, is that they were interested in doing that. And I think that would have been for Facebook, not for Bitcoin. I mean, for Bitcoin, especially years ago. Again, we're talking like that they had these meetings. This was prediction like 5-6 years ago. Okay. These, it would have been great at the time, I suppose, for the Bitcoin price. I wouldn't say it was good for Bitcoin overall because fuck Facebook. But regardless of that, that was the initial prediction. Okay, is that's the direction they were going. And not that would have been crazy, because already at that time you had a tech giant getting behind Bitcoin, that being Microsoft, right? Which, of course, they've backpedaled on significantly to their detriment. But then that company's, we were talking about them last week. I mean, they're just a clusterfuck right now. How's Bill Gates and Epstein doing right now? Oh boy. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. But when Facebook finally announced this, Libra, that being basically their cryptocurrency, and we use that term very lightly because it's very, very centralized. It's not, when we think cryptocurrencies, we generally think decentralized. Again, we covered this quite a few episodes ago when the news broke on that, partly because, like I said, that Facebook would be the first tech giant to really get in on this. And they were. I mean, I think that prediction really ended up coming very true, that they were very interested in this. I mean, the Microsoft thing kind of shocked everybody, but then again, Microsoft hasn't really, stuck to their guns on that affair. Regardless, And I mean, Microsoft not accepting Bitcoin, does that mean anything to Bitcoin at all? Does that hurt the Bitcoin community? Does that hurt Bitcoin in any way? No, it doesn't matter. Bitcoin is so many leaps and bounds beyond as far as a concept and a technology than any tech giant could even begin to get into. And Facebook's implementation of Libra really proves the point, because it was a very backwards, digital currency concept. And the news that broke is that basically a lot of the partners involved with Libra have realized the same. Now, talk about some of those partners, because there are some interesting names within that, including Zappo and Coinbase specifically might be the most interesting there, right? Because Coinbase is certainly very serious about cryptos. But you have Thrive Capital, Ribbit Capital, a lot of people that have been looking in the cryptocurrency space. And then you had more traditional companies that I think surprised everybody and kind of got people on board with the idea that this could be a serious contender, or it could at least get serious use of some kind. There's no competition for Bitcoin. No one's suggesting that. Or I shouldn't say that. There's plenty of people who suggest that. I don't. Okay. But you had Stripe, eBay, Visa, as in, Visa, credit cards, and MasterCard. Now, I mean, and there's a bunch of other names involved with that too. Kiva, I mean, there's a bunch. But those four that I just listed off initially, let's read this here. Actually, this is the headline from Zero Hedge. Libra is dead. Stripe, Visa, and MasterCard all abandoned Facebook's cryptocurrency. And this story is from Friday. It's October 11th, 2019. So very fresh. 1 week after we reported that Facebook's Libra stablecoin project, Libra was imploding as online payment giant PayPal quit the Libra network, which that was another name involved. PayPal was getting involved with it. They've run away. We can now set the time of death to today. That's when first eBay, then Stripe, and finally MasterCard all abandoned Mark Zuckerberg's pet cryptocurrency, which is anything but, project. As FT reports, Financial Times, eBay and Stripe became the second and third major companies in a week to drop out of Facebook's planned cryptocurrency following sustained political pressure and just days before the project's backers are due to meet for their first board meeting, which may soon be empty. Quote, we highly respect the vision of the Libra Association. However, eBay has made the decision to not move forward as a founding member. At this time, we are focused on rolling out eBay's managed payments experience for our customers, end quote, a company spokesperson said in a statement to the Financial Times. Echoing eBay's sentiment, payment group Stripe also pulled out, saying that, quote, Stripe is supportive of projects that aim to make online commerce more accessible for people around the world. Libra has this potential. We will follow its progress closely and remain open to working with the Libra Association at a later stage, end quote. Hammering the final nail in the coffin of Zuckerberg's attempt to become the world's central banker, at roughly the same time the world's biggest credit card processors, Visa and MasterCard, also announced they are dropping out of the Libra coalition. Echoing the apologetic statements of the former Libra members, Visa said that while it continues to be interested in Libra's blockchain work, it will not be joining the Libra Association at this time as it evaluates Libra for factors including regulation. Now, Stanley breaking in for a second on this, and what we're reading here, we did know that really just after a couple weeks of Libra's announcement, that there were, regulatory concerns around the world were starting to pop up. It's shocking, frankly, that very few people were, it didn't sound like there was a lot of excitement around this at all. Maybe from some of these partners, there was a little degree of excitement, but it didn't sound like anybody really in the finance game was very excited. It didn't sound like anybody in politics was very excited. I didn't see any senators or anything backing it up. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Not that I give a rat's fucking shit about, what politicians think about anything. Okay. But nobody was really on board with this. So it's important to bring up anyway. And the regulatory environment that it was going to face is interesting. We'll talk more. I'll reiterate what I theorize was behind the concept of Libra in the first place, and then maybe add on a little spice to that. But let's keep reading a little bit of the story here. It's not long from Zero Hedge. The decisions by these anchor companies, whose departure effectively kills Libra, are a death blow to Facebook's plans for Libra, the most ambitious attempt yet to get consumers to adopt a cryptocurrency to pay for goods and services on the internet, and follow intense scrutiny from regulators and politicians, some of which have called for the project to be stopped altogether, citing money laundering concerns and worries about wider financial stability. Without a strong network of financial partners that could help transfer currencies into Libra and global retailers to accept it as a form of payment, its reach would be non-existent. Earlier this week, we also learned that CEO Mark Zuckerberg is going to testify in front of Congress about the plans later this month, although at this rate, he won't have to. After all, Libra is now dead. The Libra Alliance, a group largely made of finance and technology companies, had each decided to put at least $10 million behind the scheme. Members are meeting in Geneva on Monday to nominate the board for the project. Wow. It would have been interesting. I recently had to go to Geneva, and it would have been interesting to be there for that meeting. But basically, anybody, almost anybody, could join. I mean, I'm sure there's some filter of some kind. But the initial fee to become a part of the Libra Alliance was basically putting down $10 million to get involved. And that was going to help back this currency, which, I mean, it's just bad money following bad money. But anyway, reading just the last bit here, a Libra spokesperson told the Financial Times that, quote, "We look forward to the inaugural Libra Association Council meeting in just 3 days and announcing the initial members of the Libra Association," end quote. At this point, he may as well cancel it. I agree with that completely. This is not going to take off, and We'll follow up on how this meeting goes, and maybe even follow up on how this ends up getting in front of Congress and what that looks like, and covering it in a future Sovryn Tech as soon as, the fallout from all this happens. But let's be clear here. So my prediction, or what I assumed was the idea behind Mark Zuckerberg starting Libra, going with his own cryptocurrency, and not running with Bitcoin, which the evidence stands Facebook was interested in at one point over the past few years. I firmly stand by, this is other investigative journalism that I did, and I'm not the only one. I firmly stand by the idea that Mark Zuckerberg was going to, in 2020, probably not going to happen now after, just the muckraking and smear jobs. But not untrue. But the smearing, frankly, let's just call it, the ass whooping that Zuckerberg is getting in the media. Initially, I think he planned on running for, if anything, a political office, maybe even president. He could have just squeezed in for 2020. And it would have been an interesting time to do so, because it's hard to imagine anybody that anyone hates more than Donald Trump. So, if anyone wants to get into the presidency, right now in the United States, right now it's kind of anybody's game, because, again, it just seems like Trump is the most hated guy on the planet, and I'm not saying that's undeserved, okay? I grew up in New York City. Believe me, I know what that bastard fucking did. But regardless of that, okay, I think that, that was initially what he was gunning for, what Zuckerberg was going for. He's going to run for political office. Then he's getting just lambasted in the media, okay? And with that happening, I think his next hope was, look, I gotta fucking conquer the world, because he's twisted in the head. Instead of controlling politics, and folks, that would have been scary as hell to have the largest surveillance network available, that being Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, to have that, as well as be the commander-in-chief, the president and whatever. That. There's so many problems with degrees of separation there. Regardless of the fact that politics is bullshit. I'm an anarchist, don't confuse me. But that's a nightmare scenario. So since he couldn't get into politics, I think he's like, well then, I'm just going to go and control the fucking money. And I think people realize that, okay, well, whatever it's the deep state or whatever fucking group you want to pick out that has some degree of power, okay, in this world, or at least in U.S. politics, they've tried to keep Zuckerberg from running for office. not complaining here, okay? They tried to keep him from running for office. That seemed to be successful. Then he wants to become basically, the software version of the Federal Reserve. And, maybe, and everybody starts sweating that, rightfully so. And I think that these pressures of eBay, MasterCard, Visa, PayPal, Stripe, all these people dropping off, and these are really the biggest players. For Zuckerberg, for Libra to be something viable, quote unquote worthwhile, and I put that in quotes, for it to be an alternative both to the US dollar, right, the greenback, and be an alternative to the real currency in the world today, that being Bitcoin, it needed to have these major players that have a massive network behind them. Okay, and also one of the, don't confuse it. One of the main reasons I'm sure that they wanted a lot of like eBay and especially eBay, there's no way they're going to get Amazon. Again, we cover that all the time. All right, the Amazon World Domination Tour. Boy, there's a story I could get into this week about that, that I actually shared on Twitter. If you follow me at Sovryn Tech, you'll see what I'm talking about. Talk about a culmination of years of things we talked about on Sovryn Tech and that I talked about years before anybody else did, just like this. You can go find that on my Twitter page. But regardless of that, okay, do go check that out. But he needed these players because they would cut through, for Libra, they would cut through a shit ton of red tape. Okay? For Libra to be a payment processor in stores automatically, having Visa and MasterCard in your little Libra association, what a great idea, right? For them. Okay, to get into developing countries. Well, you have Kiva and Mercy Corps and a lot of these other kinds of financial institutions that are supposed to help out in those areas. Okay, and those are still part of it, but again, you're losing a lot of the payment processing, a lot of the injection into even retail stores when you lose Visa and MasterCard, and you lose the ability to pay very much around the world. You lose Stripe, you lose a serious backend, same with PayPal, you lose eBay, you lose a lot. People don't realize, first off, there's a reason that eBay and PayPal split, right? Because of the concerns really around antitrust and the fact that eBay, and I don't think a lot of people realize this, eBay has been the forerunner. Even Amazon has taken advantage of the amount of lobbying and regulatory legwork that eBay has gone through really in the past 20 years. They have set standards, helped set laws for how e-commerce gets done in any way, shape, or form. And you want that team in your association. That way, when regulators and politicians do come knocking on Libra's door, they can say, well, you let eBay do this, and hey, eBay's with us. And it's all passing by association. It's a brilliant move. These are absolutely the companies you want to have on your team, no doubt. But now most of them are backing out, and I expect probably over the next week. Coinbase is probably still involved because they would have liked to have taken advantage of the regulatory environment that Libra would pave the way, similar to what eBay did for e-commerce, again, over the past couple decades. I'm sure they'd love to take advantage of that because, they're pulling a long haul. And we know the issues they've had with DOJ and so on. Anyway, we're not talking about that. But these companies have backed out. Now, why did they back out? Is it because they got pressure from, the powers that be, they, them, those, whatever group, that they're affiliated with, and said, hey, we can't let Mark Zuckerberg fucking become the world's central banker? Is it because of that? Maybe, but then why did they join up in the first place? Like, what was the deal in the first place? Was it to gauge public interest? And the public just basically said, the fuck we trust this asshat, we're not going to use anything involved with him. Maybe, that's a possibility. I will say, though, and this is kind of so I told you why I initially think Libra became a thing. Why I think this is happening. And why Libra really, another reason that I want to tack on here, okay, that has come up more recently. And one that might explain why these companies got involved with Facebook, became strange bedfellows in any way. And that is, is I think, and look, what has the better encryption? It's Signal. You have no argument, no debate from me. A lot of the crypto space, however, though, and plenty of other people, activists and so on, they use Telegram. In fact, for fuck's sake, go to Telegram if you have Telegram installed. Okay, first off, you can connect with me if you want. It's at Sovryn. I don't mind. Okay, I talk to listeners on there all the time. I just had an hours-long conversation, actually, with one the other day. It was beautiful. And I'm honored. But, if you look on Telegram, look at the stickers. Not the emoji that come with whatever operating system you're using. The actual Telegram stickers. There's a whole one that's, all it is, it's activists. I think it's called Activist Girl or something like that. And it's just her, wearing like a hoodie and, doing all this like kind of quasi-anarchist or quasi-anarchist stuff. And all this like, it's really cool. And frankly, I think kind of sexy. I'll just say it. I love it. So, this is a very popular app with people that would need to use something like a cryptocurrency that can get across borders and so on. And I think they could have genuinely been sweating the idea of Telegram baking in a cryptocurrency right into their app. Because clearly governments can't stop Telegram, partly by Telegram's business, or, not just their business model, but actually their organization model, where they move from country to country just to stay one step ahead of the law, right? So this is a messaging app. I'm not saying it's the best one out there. Okay. But I am saying it's one that's heavily used. I use it. Plenty of people do. And it's very, very popular. It's becoming more popular when you think, with things happening in Hong Kong and so on. I mean, and certainly there's other apps that are becoming popular as well, but Telegram is up there. And for that to have a cryptocurrency, yeah, I bet if there's anything the powers that be, whoever they may be, whatever groups that happens to be, I'm sure they're sweating balls right now at the possibility. And we know there's a deadline for when, really Telegram can come out with and it's called the Gram, right? Is their cryptocurrency that they're planning. They can come out with it at any time, but there is a time frame within which they have to release a MVP, a minimum viable product. And I think that's end of October. We talked about this recently on Sovryn Tech, before they have to give all their money back to their investors. Because again, they never did the public round with the Gram, which I'm not necessarily against that, but anyway, whatever. Okay. So I think that the initial worry was that they needed a genuine competitor that wasn't Bitcoin, because you can't have Bitcoin be the competitor to the Gram. Okay. And that you can't have Visa and MasterCard necessarily backing Bitcoin, because when people learn more about Bitcoin, and if suddenly there was you had an announcement, say, on whatever banking app you happen to be using or your credit card app or whatever, it says, oh, this is now also attached to Bitcoin. People start looking into Bitcoin. Look, when people look into Bitcoin, their minds change. Their minds expand. And because suddenly you realize, wait a minute, why am I dealing with a bank? Why am I dealing with this? Blah, blah, blah. It changes people's perception of the world and of life. That's not hyperbole. I've seen it. Okay, with people who were very salt of the earth, and then suddenly you start telling them about Bitcoin, and they have their holy fuck come to Satan moment. And bravo. So you can't go to that. You can't go telling people about that, even though you can't stop them from hearing about it either, right? Thankfully. So you have to sign up with somebody. And, as far as who actually competes, it's interesting that they went with Facebook, because really Facebook is the only company that competes and really dominates, because of their ownership of WhatsApp specifically, dominates the messaging space. And that's where it needs to happen. They have a 21st century currency, which Bitcoin is really the only one. But to have that, okay, you need to have it attached in this way, in this even if it's just quasi peer-to-peer fashion, and it is quasi. Okay, no one's saying these messaging apps are truly peer-to-peer. But you would need to do that, okay, to be a contender in the 21st century. And so I think initially they got on there because I think they were sweating what Telegram had in mind. And because, don't think that they're just, so many people on social media and even in forums and wherever else, they're just responding to the news that they hear from whatever news source. Do you think that these financial institutions and these companies, do you think that they're just like every move that they make by the day is in response to some horseshit happening on Twitter in that moment? The fuck they are. No, they're playing chess. They're responding to stuff, insider news that they knew months or even years ago. So what's happening here is, well, maybe they know, maybe they backed out because they realized that maybe Telegram isn't going to be able to release their product, or it's just too scary right now to let Mark Zuckerberg have this much power, say, with the Libra. And maybe they will, I mean, who knows? Or maybe there's a way that they're going to set up certain things to where they might have some, like a majority position or power within this. Maybe these companies know that the U.S. government's going to do something nasty. You know, something Bill Gates style, right? DOJ versus Microsoft or whatever, 2001. Do something like that against Zuckerberg. Maybe they know that that's coming, and then they can move in on the Libra Association and take it over. And who the fuck? Maybe they could even own Messenger at that point, as in Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or whatever, if this stuff has to get broken up. I don't know, but I give you some postulates as to what the hell's going on. Regardless, the truth is they know, and despite whatever flowery language they might want to toss, at the Libra Association and what they're doing, these companies know that this idea, as it stands right now, Libra is a loser. It is an absolute loser, and anybody attached to it, it's pie on the face. So they're running away. Do I think Libra is effectively dead? Yeah, I think so. Is there going to be another shot at this in the future? Yeah, absolutely. Of course there is. I mean, the legacy institutions that exist in the world today, they have to, I don't want them to, don't misunderstand me, but I expect them and understand that in their eyes, they have to do something to continually take on Bitcoin, and cryptocurrencies in general, and, and a lot of blockchain tech. They have to do something to be out in front of that, because otherwise they're going to lose, they're going to lose, the authoritative position that they have. So I think that's the score. Am I happy about this? Hell yeah. I want to be, dancing around, ding dong, the witch is dead, the witch is dead. I'm all for that. I'm ready to get up and start dancing. Woo! You ever see the Man of Tomorrow dance? I'm not kidding. I can rock and roll that shit. And this is a time for such a thing. So if you want to, pause the podcast, put on your favorite song. I don't care. Put on some Neil Diamond. Put on a Forever in Blue Jeans or Desiree and start dancing to it, baby. Make that stuff happen. Anyway, we will be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. We got a whole other story to get into, a lot of excitement. And, yeah, all right. Go. Get dancing. Get dancing. In 2014, he ran from Miami to San Francisco, raising awareness for Bitcoin and the homeless epidemic in America, and now he's doing it again. Blockchain evangelist and advocate for homeless rights Jason King is running across North America right now, from Miami to Santa Monica, right now. 5 years later, his commitment to promoting blockchain technology and fighting the homeless epidemic in America is stronger than ever. And you can help Jason now by going to blockchainacrossamerica.com. While you're there, donate to Satoshi Forest Sanctuary Incorporated to help the homeless, along with all kinds of other ways you can help. Get involved today. blockchainacrossamerica.com. That's blockchainacrossamerica.com.
HackSec.
And if you want to really, to talk about Libra and the death of Libra and all that, and at the very least warn people, a great way to do that too, you could actually call into Sovryn Tech sponsor Free Talk Live. Go to freetalklive.com. It's an open phones radio show. You are going to get your chance to call in, believe me, because it runs 7 nights a week, 365 days a year, 3 hours a night. Holy hell. And you can call in. There's, I mean, believe me, you could talk about anything, and the hosts are ready to take you on or, to talk with you about it. And I think it'd be a great way to let everybody know. I mean, actually, Free Talk Live was so ahead of the curve. I mean, a lot of people in the Bitcoin space learned about Bitcoin. We're talking like in 2010, 2011. They learned about Bitcoin because of Free Talk Live. That's how ahead of the curve they are. And, bring up Libra and go ahead and you can start singing the whole thing. Ding dong, the wicked witch is dead. Make it happen. But go to freetalklive.com, get listening, call in if you want, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Now, the next story that I want to get in here, this is one that was sent to me on Twitter, via Twitter, open tweet, so you can find it, you can see it. I retweeted it, by a great listener, long time listener, and someone I consider a great friend. But he sent me this story. And he basically said he thought this would make for some great show fodder. And there's a lot of things said here that sounded much like what we talk about on Sovryn Tech. So this is an episode that I think is fitting for a couple reasons. One is we were just questioning everything that Silicon Valley's doing, or, that the tech giants are doing, particularly Facebook, in the last segment of the show in relationship to Libra. And this is more of that questioning, but then also because it is, I read this and I almost wanted to burst into tears reading this story from Vox. Okay? This is not Sovryn Tech, but I mean, it sounds like it, and I think you'll think so when you hear it, when I read some of this to you, and I'll respond to some of it. But this is such a powerful and important story because it covers so much of what we talked about over the past 8 years this show's been rocking and rolling. But the beauty of it for me, and why I wanted to basically cry, was that, and I've said this in other episodes recently, because again, a lot of predictions we've made over the years have ended up coming true in 2019. It's been a hell of a year, hasn't it? But I read it and I was like, I mean, because you can listen to me and you could say, oh, well, that's just Brian Sovryn. He's crazy. He's nuts. Like he does whatever. I mean, that guy, I mean, who knows what he's the next thing you know, I mean, 1 second he's talking about Bitcoin, the next second he's talking about Star Trek, next thing you know, he's like out in the woods and he's probably fucking against a tree or something like that. And I mean, this guy's just nuts. Even though we can't stop listening. The thousands and thousands of you. Now you can write me off like that. Okay. And say that somehow I am not in the popular consciousness. So who gives a shit? Well, Vox is as quote unquote, and I put that in quotes, as legitimate as a news source can come, or as a thought blog of some kind, can really come. And so for it to be in that, I mean, it's not the New York Times, not that I care about that either, but that's pretty up there. And for ideas that we have been laying out on this show for some time, including some of the most, perhaps what you could consider controversial, is a very impressive thing for me to read, and it's something that is vindicating for me. And also, I mean, I don't need a confidence boost, but it's confidence boosting because it's like, oh, so I'm not the only one seeing the problems with all this shit and what the tech giants in Silicon Valley want to do. Aha! Well, here we go. Let's read this. And this is actually by a woman, Rose Eveleth, who she has a podcast that I will also recommend, and the Sovryn Tech listener recommended. I believe it's called Flash Forward. Well, anyway, here it is. Here's the headline. This tells the story in a very real way. And let's understand, this is from October 8th, okay, 2019. This is this year. This is just a few days ago. The biggest lie tech people tell themselves and the rest of us. And here we go. They see, this is the subheader, they see facial recognition, smart diapers, and surveillance devices as inevitable evolutions. They're not. Woohoo! Here we go. Imagine you're taking an online business class, the kind where you watch video lectures and then answer the questions at the end. But this isn't a normal class, and you're not just watching the lectures. They're watching you back. Every time the facial recognition system decides that you look bored, distracted, or tuned out, it makes a note, and after each lecture it only asks you about content from those moments. This isn't a hypothetical system, it's a real one deployed by a company called Nestor, and if you don't like the sound of it, you're not alone. Neither do the actual students. When I asked the man behind the system, French inventor Marcel Saucet, how the students in these classes feel about being watched, he admitted that they didn't like it. They felt violated and surveilled, he said, but he shrugged off any implication that it was his fault. Quote, everybody is doing this. It's really early and shocking, but we cannot go against natural laws of evolution, end quote. That's a direct quote. Stallion breaking in from this guy. Against the natural laws of evolution. Woo, let's keep reading. As a reporter who covers technology and the future, I constantly hear variations of this line as technologists attempt to apply the theory Charles Darwin made famous in biology to their own work. I'm told that there is a progression of technology, a moment that is bigger than any individual inventor or CEO. They say they are simply caught in a tide, swept along in a current they cannot fight. They say it inevitably leads them to facial recognition, now even being deployed on children, smart speakers that record your intimate conversations, and doorbells that narc on your neighbors. They say we can't blame these companies for the erosion of privacy or democracy or trust in public institutions. That was all going to happen sooner or later. Stallion breaking in for a second. This is basically what they say. In fact, there's a book by Kevin Kelly called What Technology Wants. Kevin Kelly, one of the guys that started Wired, is in Wired magazine. And I remember reading that a few years ago and going, no? Wait, are you serious? Like, humans don't have fucking agency and we can't, like, change course with shit? The hell we can't. Of course we can. But regardless, anyway, basically saying this concept has been openly admitted and suggested for many years. You know, that you can't stop the tide of forward progress in technology, or just forward progress perhaps in general. But let's keep reading. Quote, when have we ever been able to keep the genie in the bottle, end quote, they ask, meaning, you know, tech giants and whoever else. Besides, they argue, people buy this stuff so they must want it. Companies are simply responding to, quote, natural selection, end quote, by consumers. There is nobody to blame for this, they say. It's as natural as gravity. Perhaps no one states this belief more clearly than inventor and futurist Ray Kurzweil in his 2005 book, which, Stallion breaking in, I've mentioned many times as a horrifying, not horrifying as in this is what the future is going to be like, but horrifying as in there are people who want this, working on it, and, you know, that would even write a book like this. And that book is The Singularity is Near. I've mentioned and brought it up many times on this show. Anyway, as Ray Kurzweil says in that book, quote, the ongoing acceleration of technology is the implication and inevitable result of what I call the law of accelerating returns, which describes the acceleration of the pace of and the exponential growth of the products of an evolutionary process, end quote. In fact, our world is shaped by humans who make decisions, and technology companies are no different. To claim that these devices are the result of some kind of ever-improving natural process not only misunderstands how evolution works, but it also suggests that everything from biological weapons to fraudulent startups like Theranos to Juicero, the $400 machine that squeezed juice out of packets, Stanley breaking in, that died, are necessary and natural. While these innovations, quote unquote, range from the dangerous to the silly, they share a common thread. Nothing about them is, quote unquote, natural. No natural process is creating a smart hairbrush, or a smart flip-flop, or a smart condom, or a Bluetooth-enabled toaster, a cryptocurrency from a photography company, or an internet-connected air freshener. And it gets worse. Wait until I get into some of the other products that some of these, when I was reading this article, Stanley breaking in, when I was reading this, I didn't even know that these things existed. And I shat myself. I'll just say it. I couldn't believe it. But let's get to, there's a subheader here. Evolution is a terrible metaphor for technology. Boy, I agree with that statement. Let's read it. Technologists' desire to make a parallel to evolution, their desire to make a parallel to evolution is flawed at its very foundation. Evolution is driven by random mutation, mistakes, not plans. And while some inventions may indeed be the result of mishaps, the decision of a company to patent, produce, and market those inventions is not. Evolution doesn't have meetings about the market, the environment, the customer base. Evolution doesn't patent things or do focus groups. Evolution doesn't spend millions of dollars lobbying Congress to ensure that its plans go unfettered. In some situations, even if we can't literally put a technological genie back in a bottle, we can artificially intervene to make sure the genie plays by specific rules. Stanley breaking in for a second on that. There are a million, even ideas like Twitter, Spotify, a lot of modern, things that are very popular, technological concepts, companies, protocols. They were invented, they were thought up. Like streaming music, that was thought up literally 50 years ago. And implementations were built. Record companies didn't jump on it. People weren't clamoring for it. Okay, so the idea that just because a technology gets developed and put out there, no, there is no guarantee, there is no reason that people just have to accept it and start taking it on. We have historical examples. Proof that is so. These things are not inevitable, or they're not inevitable. Let's keep going. There are clear laws about what companies can and can't do in the realm of biological weapons. The FDA ensures drugs are tested for efficacy and safety before they can be sold. The USDA ensures new food research is done with care. But I get the point. We don't let anybody frack or drill for oil or build nuclear power plants wherever they like. We don't let just anybody make and sell cars or airplanes or guns. So the assertion that technology companies can't possibly be shaped or restrained with the public's interest in mind is to argue that they are fundamentally different from any other industry. They're not. Next subheader. This idea persists in part because Americans cannot resist the allure of quote-unquote progress. Here we go. In many ways, the American tech mogul blaming some invisible arc of innovation for his choices is simply an echo of the very ethos that founded America. Progress at all costs. The men and women who colonized America largely saw progress as a march, a continual straight path, forward at all times, never to be questioned or slowed. Benjamin Franklin, himself an inventor, once wrote, quote, "The rapid progress true science now makes occasions my regretting sometimes that I was born so soon. It is impossible to imagine the height to which may be carried in 1,000 years, or the power of man over matter," end quote. So basically, Stanley breaking in, Ben Franklin's like, oh, I'm born too soon because the heights we're going to get to in science and whatever else is just, it's going to be an amazing time in the future. I would love to have Ben Franklin look at the surveillance society, not state, society that we live in, and I wonder if he would still think such a thing. But regardless, we'll keep reading. So to suggest a slowing, or perhaps even, God forbid, a reverse, seems antithetical to the fabric of America. When former Uber engineer Anthony Lewandowski says, quote, "What already happened doesn't really matter. You don't need to know that history. You don't need to know that history to build on what they made. In technology, all that matters is tomorrow," end quote. He is echoing the sentiments of our nation's founders. Quote, "These arguments for corporate supremacy and technological progress are so deeply connected in the American mind," end quote, says Luke Stark, a researcher who studies behavior and computing at Microsoft Research Montreal. Quote, "It's really tied to the whole American manifest destiny and the broader history of American settler colonialism," end quote. "The attitude is that we must march on, forward, westward, no matter what stands in our way. Going back is simply not an option." Even those afraid of all-seeing corporations argue that instead of pressing pause, we, the consumers, must simply move forward more quickly. Quote, "What I tried to focus on is not to try to stop the march of technological progress," end quote. Yuval Noah Harari, a historian and the author of 'Sapiens, told Time magazine, quote, "Instead, I try to run faster," end quote. Now, boy, Stanley breaking, now I could stop on that for a while. Because Harari he also wrote a book called Homo Deus, which we reviewed on Sovereign Tech years ago when it came out. He actually wrote another book. It's only so he's Israeli, and it's in modern Hebrew right now. Like, it's only published in Israel, in that language. It's not in English yet. There is a TED Talk, and I've been intrigued I've wanted to actually cover this on Sovereign Tech. There is a TED Talk where he is basically saying that he's expecting a Ready Player One-esque future, a VR future, where basically, we can't kill everybody, is his statement. So everybody, all the useless people again, these are not exactly his words. I'm paraphrasing, but it's certainly not how I feel about people. Okay. But he's basically saying the only thing we can do is just kind of like intravenously feed people and let them live their lives in some kind of VR paradise, because, automation's going to make human work pointless and blah, blah, blah. And these people aren't going to know what to do with themselves. And we're going to run into this really big problem. It's during a Q&A of a recent TED Talk that he gave, and it's a terrifying notion. And the idea that he thinks this is how things are going to be, oh boy, I'd love to break into that. But regardless, he is not interested in stopping or in stemming or staving or, well, not staving. Staving is, that's bent. No, staving. So staving this tide. But regardless, let's keep reading. This endless punishing race in the name of quote-unquote progress is often what drives consumer behavior too. Despite the quote-unquote American dream, security, safety, prosperity, being more and more out of reach for everyday Americans. The idea that it's just around the corner drives people to purchase these products. Now, Stallion breaking in, as we've brought up many times in the show, the concept of the American dream is literally out of a marketing office. It is marketing. And it is marketing for government and a whole lot of companies that are in bed with government. And it's been that way for 100 years. That concept is it's not the reality, it is marketing. Anyway, let's keep reading. If you have the newest app, people think their lives will be easier. You'll have more free time, more quality time. Commercials promise more backyard barbecues under sparklers and birthday surprise parties facilitated by internet-connected light bulbs. And when we buy the products, tech companies take that as a green light to continue on their quote-unquote inevitable path, inching ever toward a world where Amazon knows exactly what you're doing, thinking, feeling, perhaps even before you do. Quote, "It's all a loop," says Stark. It's weird. That's what puts people in this bind. They think they should be able to have it all. They can't, and technology is a kind of prophylactic to cope with this stuff. End quote. So I want to stop on this for a second. And this is a point I've brought up over the years as well. This is a great refresher of much of what we've talked about in Sovereign Tech over the past 8 years. That's part of why I'm reading this, okay? And that is, what technology exactly has given you more free time? Now, maybe there are technologies that have given you more free time. The dishwasher maybe gave you, maybe gave you more time to do other things, or the washing machine, or, you go down the list of some things that one could consider to be fairly practical and useful, and not just some, widget getting put upon you to buy, and you think you need it to be cool or something. Okay. It's not that, things that you could look at and say, okay, that actually saves time. But then what do people do with that time that they've saved? Often enough, they just work more. Most of the people with, a head on their shoulders today are working more than they've ever worked. So all this technological innovation, what the fuck has it done? You're saying it gives you more free time for backyard barbecues? I don't see people doing backyard barbecues. I see people, on their laptops in their backyard working more. Not relaxing. Is that free time? No. So no, these technological innovations are not giving you more free time. That's a bunch of horseshit. Now, if having a dishwasher meant that I went out for a nice, beautiful walk in the woods with the loveliest woman on the planet, I'd say great and grand and wonderful. But how many of you are doing that? Precisely. Reading on, because, don't worry, it gets worse. Perhaps the most telling place this kind of loop shows up is in the high-tech baby device market. I'm just going to start with the first one. The rest don't really matter. I'll read them all. I'll read this paragraph, and then we're going to go back. Bluetooth diapers, internet-connected baby monitors, an anklet that keeps track of your infant's every move, Do you know who gets anklets? Criminals, prisoners. Those are the people that get anklets. Is that what you're getting your baby ready for? Get ready for a life of fucking indentured servitude, slave. Woo! Good on you, parents. Way to helicopter. Reading on. Heartbeat and, so these things keep track of heartbeat, temperature fluctuation, all that. Yeah, I got to keep that tax slave alive. Right from birth. In a country with an ever-eroding social safety net, parents are sold these surveillance devices under the guise of care and love with a healthy dash of paranoia. Now, I want to stop on one of these. I want to go back. The Bluetooth diaper. What the fuck is wrong with you? Yeah, I usually don't like this phrase, but there's the term end stage capitalism. You're putting a Bluetooth monitor in your baby, because I looked into these. I'm like, wait, what? There's Bluetooth connected diapers? Well, you gotta be shitting me. And I'm like, well, no, I guess the babies are shitting. Is that what it's keeping track of? And yes, that's exactly what it's doing. It tells you when your baby has soiled itself, because I guess, parent, even though supposedly, and again, this is the circular logic that Silicon Valley tech giants put upon you, okay? Supposedly, you have more free time. I would assume if you're a parent, you're spending that free time with your fucking kid. As you should, steward. Maybe hugging it a little bit more, giving it some more touch, good things for babies. Not, surround it with love, not Bluetooth fields. But no, now you don't even have to watch your kid. Don't worry, your smartphone can do that. Amazon will take care of it. Google will take care of it. In fact, they'll even order more diapers when you run out. Because you're too fucking busy to pay attention to your own goddamn kid. Fuck you. You need a Bluetooth diaper. You should be ashamed of yourself. That's unbelievable that exists. You're incentivizing kids to grow up under surveillance. You are incentivizing parents to not pay attention to their fucking kids. Or worse, to pay too much, to buy too much, to be helicopter parents and not let them explore the world. If I ever, it's at somebody's house and somebody is looking at their phone, scrolling through Facebook, and then suddenly they won't even get off of their own ass and they'll yell to their, to the wife or husband or whatever, whoever, and say, hey, I just got a notification the baby's diaper needs to be changed. Boy, I am a nonviolent man. But it'd take a lot for me to not want to just give a good old classic Star Trek Kirk slap right across that face. Say, what the hell? Reading on. As Stark writes in his paper on consumers who surveil their loved ones. Because that's what it is, folks. Quote, parents in particular mothers, have long been reminded by advertisers that their children are at risk from external threats, poor nutrition, social exclusion, the mother's own failures as a parent. And that's their surest route to protecting their children and ameliorating their newly provoked anxiety about these dangers is consumption. So basically, your child is going to die. We're all going to die. Buy more. Give us more data. You're going to die. Give us more data. Wow. How cheap you hold life. Buying this device, reading on, even if the details are a bit creepy, shows that you care, that you're a good parent. And because parents are shamed and nudged into buying these tracking devices, more and more of them pop up in the market. It's these purchases that technologists equate to, quote, natural selection, end quote, but it's nearly impossible for most people to opt out of a lot of these arrangements. So I want to stop on that for a second. Here's the thing, is that no, this idea that it's natural selection, that this is the evolution of things, no. It's not true at all, because we don't even have the options in the market. I had somebody actually just this past week's Q&A episode for Zomia 1 Underground. If you want to join it and you want to hear it, you go to zomia1.com, you sign up, whatever dollar amount you want to put on that, and you get access to this stuff. And you can ask me questions too. Okay. And they asked me, they're like, look, I don't want a 4K TV. I don't want a smart TV. What the fuck do I do? You know why they're asking me that? They're asking me that because it's practically impossible to buy a TV that's not smart, that's not, say, surveilling on you if you're an informed consumer, right? How is there a choice? What is my choice? That I have to go and buy a 30-year-old Zenith television that's a CRT and the color tube's probably going bad on it now, but even though, Satan bless it, the thing's been alive for 70 years. Okay, do I have to go buy that? I have to buy an old television. I can't buy a new television that maybe has HDMI built in so I can fucking connect, I don't know, my Nintendo Switch or something? Which is it? What kind of consumer choice is that? What kind of natural progression is bullshit? That's artificial selection. You are forcing me to buy these dumbass products. The time will come, perhaps, where you don't even get a choice of whether or not you get a Bluetooth diaper or not. All diapers will have Bluetooth or RFID baked into them or whatever the hell else, because, boy, we got to track those babies. Don't let them be free. Don't even give them the concept of being free. Let's finish up the story. With great power comes great responsibility. Often consumers don't have much power of selection at all. Those who run small businesses find it nearly impossible to walk away from Facebook, Instagram, and Yelp, Etsy, even Amazon. Employers often mandate that their workers use certain apps or systems like Zoom, Slack, and Google Docs. Boy, I feel that. Clients I have to work with, they won't. You're not on Google Docs? You don't have a Google account? You know, if you say that to them, good luck getting a job. Oh, yeah, we need to communicate on Slack with the rest of the team. No, you realize Slack is that? No, you need to communicate on Slack with the rest of the team. People just don't care. Reading on. Quote, it is only the hyper-privileged who are now saying, I'm not going to give my kids this, or I'm not on social media, end quote, says Ruman Chowdhury, a data scientist at Accenture. Quote, you actually have to be so comfortable in your privilege that you can opt out of things, end quote. And so we're left with the tech world claiming to be driven by our desires when those decisions aren't ones that most consumers feel good about. There's a growing chasm between how everyday users feel about the technology around them and how companies decide what to make. And yet these companies say they have our best interests in mind. We can't go back, they say. We can't stop the natural evolution of technology. But the natural evolution of technology was never a thing to begin with. And it's time to question what progress actually means. Woo! That's what I'm talking about. Bravo, Rose. Bravo. So I read this, and again, I just say to myself, oh, fucking A, yes. Someone else is saying it. Like, what is this obsession with constant growth? What is this obsession with, yeah, no, we have to go. I know we just released 1080p, but now we got to go to 8K. Yeah, I know 4K's only been out for 2 years. We got to go to 8K right now. At CES next year, we have to give people 8,000 fucking pixels. They need to taste the brain matter. Otherwise, they won't watch our dumbass shit. Who says that this is how it has to be? And I don't necessarily want to blame people. I don't want to blame the everyday consumer. Okay, you know, a great point that was brought up to me. I mean, here's what's scary is I talked about that Unlocked event that I went to where I had the great honor, and I mean that in every way I can, from the bottom of my heart, the great honor that I finally got to meet a real hero of mine, Steve Gibson. Okay, everybody there was just like, yeah, biometrics are great, Alexa's great, Amazon knowing all this shit, oh, it's fucking wonderful, this is beautiful. I could not believe that I was hearing that. I mean, I really couldn't believe that everybody was just on board with this stuff. But a very brilliant and salient point that everybody up there brought up. Bill Cheswick, I think, might have said it initially, and I know it's been brought up on Steve Gibson's show, Security Now, as late. And that is, you know, if people have a hard time figuring something out, it's not that people are stupid. Now, a lot of people are stupid. Let me be clear on that. Okay. But at the same time, if people, for a lot of things, I still think that this statement that they made is true, and it's an enlightening one. If people are having a hard time with something, or they can't figure something out, or they can't use it, perhaps the engineer has failed. And I think that is very salient, and that speaks much to this. Okay, because I don't want to blame the consumer and say, hey, look, you know what? If you don't like what a modern television does, and I'm not talking about my listeners, but like if you don't like what a modern television does, or if you don't like what this smartphone does, or if you don't like what this technology has, blah, 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 you know, don't buy it. Like, let's just do, you know, mass non-compliance, market non-compliance. Let the market really speak. And people will just be done buying TV. They cancel their cable accounts and blah, 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 whatever. Okay. But that really, you know, that can't, I don't want to go down that road, because ultimately that can't really happen, right? Because, hey, Food's got to get on the table. And you probably got to talk to somebody on Slack to make that happen today. Or you have to fill out a Google Doc. I get it. Okay. So I don't want to blame them. I will blame the engineers who, and really ultimately, I'll blame maybe the supply guys, whatever side it happens to be at these, ridiculously sized, that if there's actually a free market, they can never get to that size corporations, companies, that they think that that they come up with this stuff and that they're okay with it. Like, oh yeah, no, 8K, sure, we can sell people on this. We can come up with the lies that somehow this is going to improve their life. I mean, there is so much to get into with all of this. I think, unfortunately, I feel like part of what Rose is saying in this story is that she was expecting regulators and politicians. She was wanting some government action involved in this to keep this, the trajectory that much of technology is on, especially when it comes to surveillance, to expect government to do anything about that. And I think she kind of was. No, that's a complete fail. That's an absolute complete fail. It's not going to work. While I agree with her ultimate sentiment, and it's an important one to bring up. Okay. I agree with the ultimate sentiment. This is not evolution. Okay. Like Kevin Kelly even said that this is like evolution and all this. This is not evolution. Okay, because this is all like centrally planned ideas. I mean, there's some things that happen as mistakes and byproducts and stuff like this. Okay, I get it. I understand that those things do happen. But by and large, this is all some kind of plan. Do I think that we can necessarily stop that plan? This isn't meant to be defeatist, because it's not. Okay, but I think for a lot of people, for a huge chunk of the planet, if you're not educated, okay, in how to thwart a lot of this surveillance and into the reasons that you don't want to get involved in the bullshit products, concepts, apps, software, interconnectivity, infrastructure that these companies are putting upon you, you really can't do much about it. I mean, because again, you have, it's government, corporations, go down the list. They're all working together. It's corporatism. How do you stand up against that when, I mean, they are putting, they are creating the rules as they go, and you have to jump from one foot to the next? You can't. I mean, you have to find, and this is where things like Bitcoin excited people, consciously or unconsciously, is that Bitcoin doesn't care about your laws. And there are a lot of technological innovations that have happened over the decades that don't care about your laws, don't care about what you want to do, because if you learn enough, you can program it your goddamn self and make it do whatever you want it to do, and you can live off to the side. And I think ultimately, those that really want to have that very happy life, because again, I think that all of this infrastructure is designed to constantly keep you buying, to keep you from being genuinely happy, to keep you from being content. So I think the only way you can genuinely be happy is to live in the cracks of this infrastructure that's all getting laid out and everybody's being told is inevitable. But it's a lie, because you can live in the cracks. Okay. And you can have a genuinely happy life. You can live outside of it. I mean, you can have, that's the very nature of subcultures, is that you are a culture that exists within a larger one that is very different from the larger one that you exist within. Those are the directions that I think we need to be looking in. Okay. I mean, if you want to try, again, the hard part is that you can say, wow, like these Bluetooth diapers and whatever else are fucking horrible ideas. You could realize that, like we're describing here, all you want. But then when it comes time, and this is how these companies work, when it comes time to where you can't, like, they force you effectively to buy these, and understand they're operating on incentives from advertisers, government, all different kinds of sectors within civilization. Okay. They're not worried about the consumer, obviously, which is the whole point of this article. Okay. But the time's going to come where you don't have a choice. That's the one that you buy. Just like, you want to buy a car today that you can actually work on? Well, you're not buying a new car that you can work on. Fuck you. Yeah, but that's what I want. So what? Who cares what you want? We're a corporation. Go, kiss our ass. That's how that's basically granted, they also get regulated into doing that, but then also a lot of those regulations, understand, this is why you have to grasp the concept of corporatism. A lot of those regulations exist because it's, say, with car companies, the car companies themselves are either taking handouts from government, so they're playing ball with whatever the government wants, or they are lobbying to make it harder for startups, for little car companies to jump in. I mean, part of the reason I kind of wonder if, and fuck Elon Musk, but part of the reason he might have started Tesla and went all electric isn't necessarily because yee-hoo the electric car, but like it kind of got him out of a lot of regulatory tape. No one's going to start DeLorean. No one's going to start AMC. No one's going to start, it's not going to happen. Because you'll get regulated out of existence because, whoever, GM, Ford, BMW, I don't know, pick the company, whoever owns who over there in Europe now. I mean, I can't keep track of that anymore. Okay. I mean, they'll regulate the shit out of you until you can't compete. So they're playing the game too. Don't feel bad for them. But this is where we're at. And it's fortunate, okay, that even if it feels like for sectors of society that this is going to be inevitable or that there's not much that they can do about it, at least other people, I hate the word hope, but the hope that I have in all of this is that other people are realizing, hey, what the hell are we doing? And don't confuse me. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go backwards. Okay. I don't want to go to the dark ages or anything remotely like that. Okay. But there are better ways to do these things. There are engineers who would tell you as much, but there are incentives, some ugly, some more neutral, some you got to wonder, that are pushing things in other directions. But ultimately, all of those things are under human control. Don't lose sight of that. Don't lose sight of that. Don't think that these things are, don't think that this is, that evolution is like a natural part of technology. Don't think anything along those lines. It's not true. And you always have the choice if you're knowledgeable enough. Anyway, that's it for this segment. I really appreciate that story getting shared. This is the kind of stuff I need to hear, B, I love to hear, and C, does make for great things to talk about on the show because it shows that we're not alone in this whole game, even in the podcast space. So I'll be right back with more. We'll end this off with something a little bit fun. We'll be right back. Hey, if you have a project that needs reliable cryptocurrency data, check out blocktap.io. Blocktap.io is a universal cryptocurrency API. You can get historical prices for Bitcoin and other digital assets that you can use to build charts and do market analysis. Blockchain data is also indexed, so you can get transaction statistics, address balances, and more for Bitcoin and other networks. Blocktap.io is free for personal use, and you don't even need to create an account to access the API. To get started, try some of the example queries on the homepage at blocktap.io. Again, that's blocktap.io, blocktap.io, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
The Climax.
All right, let's lighten this up. It is time for the Climax, where I can talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, had the great pleasure, Ellen and I, we had the great pleasure of going to see Alien in theaters. Very nice theater at that, very comfy. But seeing it for celebrating its 40th anniversary. Alien, I don't think needs much introduction, but we're talking about that Alien from 1979, the classic science fiction film by Ridley Scott, starring Sigourney Weaver, and of course is the character of Ellen Ripley, another great Ellen. And just a total classic. I mean, an icon in cinema, not just science fiction. We are talking about a movie that is widely considered one of the greatest films of all time, and rightfully so. While I think a case can be made that it was very much inspired by a lot of wilder science fiction films from the 1950s. Certainly, most of the genre, and cinema in general, I think has absolutely been influenced by the movie Alien going forward, after 1979. 1979, that whole later 70s and the 80s, I mean, what a magical fucking time, because all of these standards that you expect when you go to see a movie today were really all laid out in that time frame inside of like a good 10 years there, 79 to, or really, 77 to maybe actually 87 might be a fair gauge, because 87 is easily one of the greatest years in movie history. So to talk about Alien, it was definitely part of that. It's really set the standard and the stage, I think, for a lot of science fiction horror. It also would later add on to, particularly with its sequel by James Cameron, that being Aliens, which I want to say is equally a great film. It's a different kind of film. It's much more of an action film, but Aliens is just a phenomenal, phenomenal piece of work. But I mean, this franchise, which Alien would start, very much popularized the concept of the Space Marine, which is really dominating science fiction right now, but at the time was barely a subgenre. Between Alien and Doom, which ironically Alien would make a great Doom game, or if you think like Aliens vs. Predator or Alien vs. Predator 2000 and classic, it would go on to do that. Not every Alien game has ever been great, but that's not what we're talking about here. What we are talking about is the original film. I stand by the idea that it's one of the greatest films of all time. Jerry Goldsmith's score, seeing it, here's the thing, seeing it in theaters. Now, this is a movie I've watched countless times. And I am a fan. I am a huge fan of the franchise. In fact, I stand by a few years ago, and I want to say this is like maybe 2013, 2014, maybe it's a little later than that. But Ridley Scott came out, and this was after he had done Alien Covenant, which came out in 2012, which is kind of a prequel to this movie, and changes very much how you look at it, which that's something to bring up as well. But he had said that he doesn't understand. He says Alien should be as big as Star Wars. Why isn't it considered as big a franchise as Star Wars? Now, I can come up with answers as to why that is, but ultimately I agree with him. There's no reason that this shouldn't be, one of the biggest franchises out there. I am a huge fan of the Alien franchise, even if I don't really like Alien 3 or Alien Resurrection. If I'm not, I like Prometheus. I mean, there's so many movies within this that I like. I love the Predator movies as well. In fact, I was very kind to the most recent Predator film. The AVP movies, Alien vs. Predator, while they make great games, and they do, just about everyone that has that name on it, those movies are atrocious. I have the Blu-rays. Don't think I'm not supportive of one of my favorite franchises, but they are atrocious. Ultimately, as great as Aliens is, James Cameron's Aliens, I don't think any movie has really recaptured the magic that Alien had. I give it an absolute, just right out of the gate, I give it a 10 out of 10. I think it is a perfect film. In fact, even, as it's been remastered and at points, maybe cleaned up a little bit, the special effects and so many parts of it just look better with age. It is absolutely a film that I think gets better with age. Ellen gave it an 8.5 out of 10. And I asked her why, of course, and I mean, we do this all the time. Like sometimes around breakfast, we'll sit down and, whatever show or a movie or something, perhaps if we watch that the night before or something like that, we'll sit around, having breakfast and we'll talk them out. And it's, what better time could you have with a best friend? There's better time, but you know what I mean? It's just a beautiful time. And, so we'll talk about this sort of thing. And I'll always ask her, so out of 10, what do you think of this? And she gave an 8.5 out of 10. She totally agreed. It's a great movie. It's an amazing movie. What, isn't it an amazing movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Ellen. So her thing was that it didn't cover the entire emotional spectrum of the human condition. And I was like, that's totally fair. Like there's no real love story. There's other parts of it that aren't there, of the human condition. Okay. And it's not the tropey thing like, oh, it has to have a love story or nobody likes it. No. It's not that. Okay. It's a fair criticism to bring up, but my response to that and why I still give it a 10, because I agree that it doesn't cover the entirety of the emotional spectrum, and I think that that's an important thing for a movie to do, to be like a cohesive whole. But my response to that is that you get, and this is similar to when we recently did a review of 1980's Flash Gordon, and that was, one of the things I brought up in that is that the movie is so great because very quickly they use very subtle, simple cues to give you a backstory to the characters, right? Okay, and you don't have to do an origin story. You don't have to do, the first 30 or even an hour of the film like has to be done today to explain where this character came from or what they're about. You can do it very quickly, and classic films or older films used to be able to pull that off. Flash Gordon's one of them. Alien is another one where we really don't know. I mean, especially in 1979, just picture this movie in a capsule. Okay, forget about Aliens or Alien Covenant or Prometheus or anything like that. This movie alone, you don't really know a whole lot about these characters, but you instantly buy them. You're instantly like, yeah, no, I mean, like when Parker cracks a joke, I mean, you get it. Dallas, I mean, you totally understand where he's coming from. You don't have to know anything about the characters because they're so well written and they do so many simple little things that you instantly pick up what they're putting down. And you instantly get what kind of character they are. Okay, now Ripley might come off as a surprise later on in the film, but then that's character progression within a film. Okay, and that's her like surprising you. That's part of the beauty of the film. And it's a statement on when the human survival instinct kicks in, which is really ultimately what Alien is a survival film, both for Ripley and for the alien. And so it speaks to that. And this is like what I was saying at the top of the show, is that when you go and see this movie in theaters, like you can't help but compare it to modern cinema, which we've seen some modern films in cinema or, in theaters. And you can't help but go like, why can't they be this fucking good? And it's not because Alien did it first. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think it trendsetted, but no, there's well done writing. Ridley Scott is top of his game. Jerry Goldsmith doing the score for this. Jerry Goldsmith is, and amazingly, he's coming off in 1979 of doing the score for Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which is incredibly bombastic and beautiful. But this is a very subdued score, right? Like, I mean, for Jerry Goldsmith, I mean, you're practically hearing nothing. For Jerry Goldsmith, who in my opinion is the greatest composer of all time, it's remarkable to not hear his music, and instead for the film to often use like Ellen mentioned, or we were talking about it, and she's like, yeah, there's these points where like there's just these little strings getting used to just build up some tension, or there's points where, like I brought up, and when you're in the theater, when you're seeing this movie in the theater and you're not watching it on I watched it on VHS probably the most. You're not watching it on shall we say, something that doesn't bring all of the visual and audio glory to light. You don't notice some of these things, but there's like heartbeats. There's a heartbeat playing in the background when, like say when the alien is nearby that you don't really pick up on. I mean, there's so many little things going on in this film, so much forethought and simplicity, but that consciously or unconsciously plays on the viewer, not on the characters so much in the movie, but that actually plays on the viewer. I mean, it's brilliant filmmaking. And that's why, me personally, I've got to give it a 10 out of 10. And it's, in fact, I was watching it, and even just the first 10 minutes. And maybe on TIE Fighter Renegades on Zomia 1, we'll talk about this. Rob might have some words about this. Maybe he'll agree with me. I don't know. But I love that man. But even just 10 minutes in, and I'm like, you know what? This movie is so much better than Star Wars. Because it felt so real and everything's so fully realized. And, something to bring up too, and folks, don't confuse me. I love Star Wars. I do a whole fucking Star Wars podcast. Are you kidding? One of the amazing things is that a lot of the technology in it looks like, okay, this is what we would have thought the future would have looked like in the 70s. But that argument, and this kind of speaks to what we were talking about with Rose's story there that we just read in the last segment. No, you'd actually want probably like CRTs and some other things that you'd want to build a ship First off, like the Nostromo in the movie is fucking huge and it's gorgeous, right? And there's so much to talk about with that. But I don't want to get into it here. There's actually a new documentary out there for Alien that I want to watch, and maybe I'll review that and talk some more about that there. But in space, go for broke. If you're building something in space, it can be fucking massive and it doesn't really matter, more or less. Okay. Size matters when you're trying to leave, an atmosphere or, escape an atmosphere. But anyway, so you would want things to be repairable. You'd want everything to be repairable on your ship. And frankly, a lot of technologies, because this used to be, as compared to today, this used to be the idea with with electronics companies. Okay, think of the ones I mentioned, say Zenith, even like GE and some others, 50, 60, 70 years ago was like, okay, yeah, but can we fix this? Okay, yeah, we're going to put this out on the market. It's new technology, but can people repair it? Because they're going to expect to have it for 20 years. And if we're asking them to pay for it at the time, which would have been like $8,000, was only like $200 or $300. If we're asking them to spend $300, we got to give them the expectation that they're going to be able to repair this thing or take it to the TV repair shop, right? So if we were to go out in space, a lot of the ways that we develop technologies, that ain't going to work. You're not going to do deep space exploration. You're going to end up with a ship of dead people, and not because of a xenomorph on your ship. They're going to die because their ship's going to fucking fail. Windows is going to crash, or whatever the fuck's going to happen there. Okay, or their stupid LED screen is going to have a 10 billion dead pixels because of a meteor storm that you went through. No, you're going to want something that you can repair, and you can't store a bunch of like spare screens and stuff. You need to have piece by piece where it's a multi-piece structure, say even for just visuals that you want to do. Where I don't know. I'm not saying to change vacuum tubes, but you get my point. So it's funny, like, as backwards as I think a lot of people would say that the interior and the design of the Nostromo would be, at the same time, I think it's exactly what a ship should look like, even if we launched it today and we sent it out there. There's a brilliance and a beauty to it. And Ellen also brought up, because of her own experience in life, that like it really felt like a factory flying in space. And I never really noticed that before, because I haven't exactly been a factory guy in my life. But she picked up on it instantly, and I'm like, yeah, such brilliant design, that they had in this, and design language where everything it wasn't cinemagetic. It wasn't made to look good on screen. It was made to look real and practical, and like that's what shit would look like in space if it was engaged in the operations for mineral oil or whatever the fuck it was that the Nostromo was after, that it was going through. And that's brilliant. And we've lost that. Like, what the fuck does half the ships in the Marvel universe do? Anyway. So it's an amazing film, and you watch it and you just go, God damn it, they don't make movies like this anymore. And I don't care if it's your first time watching it, last time watching it, yeah, whatever, I don't know. Okay. It's not because they did things first, because there's not a lot that it really did first. There's certain tones that I think it set and things that it popularized, but it didn't really do it first. So you can't give it that. It's that it was so well done. And the acting, Tom Skerritt, Sigourney Weaver, go down the list of everybody involved with that. The acting was fucking top notch. And just the action. Every time that Ash, spoiler alerts, the movie's only been out 40 years, okay? But when Parker takes that like fire hydrant thing, whatever, and bashes it against Ash, and like his head like bursts to the right because he's an android. That's still just as intense and looks just as good as it had to have been in 1979. Oh, it's a masterpiece of a movie and a great franchise that, I'll say this, okay? With now that Alien has been around for 40 years, because everybody has said, and I even said during this review, that the movie does not, like, none of the movies have really recaptured the magic of that first film. Aliens, I think, did a great job, but again, it was a very different film. But I think that's actually the key, is that for Alien to perhaps get as big as Star Wars, okay, first off, it can't go through focus groups. No art should go through focus groups. And believe me, Star Wars, Marvel, and just about everything you watch today goes through focus groups, and that's why most of it sucks. So there's that. But the other thing is that I don't think Alien has to be beholden to the horror survival genre. I think that you can make, and maybe Prometheus is what scared this off, because I thought Prometheus was a great movie. I mean, it ain't 10 out of 10, but it's a great movie. And because Prometheus was received coldly, shall we say, I think that's the reason that Ridley Scott was like, okay, fine, I'll just do Alien again. And that's, what we got with Alien Covenant, which also wasn't a bad movie, but, whatever. It also wasn't the most original thing on planet Earth either. No pun intended there. But I mean, this is the thing too. Another thing that like Ellen brought up and that I noticed is like, the pace of Alien. It's very slow. It's very methodical. And we are losing that in movies as well. Okay, everything has to be action, move, and everything's got to be exciting, or people are going to turn away and look at their smartphones. Well, the problem there isn't that a movie is slow. The problem in that case is absolutely, I mean, we're debating where the problem was in tech right now throughout this episode. Well, with this, I can tell you exactly where the problem is. The problem is with the fucking people. You could say that they're, programmed into dopamine overload by tech companies, fine. But ultimately, the problem's with the people, just because they can't sit through a 2.5 hour film that doesn't move at a cheetah's pace. That's, and doesn't have a million rainbow bright lights, shining in their face. That's their problem. Okay. But a great movie should stand above all that. And because Prometheus was a slow film, and I applaud it for that. I thought that was great that it was such a slow film. So anyway, but Alien could do other things. They could experiment in other genres. Don't go to comedy. Don't you fucking go to comedy. Wait till you hear Sovereign Trek this month, because it is so ridiculous what Star Trek is doing right now. Do not go to comedy, Alien, but you could explore a lot of other genres that I think could be very interesting. But if until we get those movies, we can certainly enjoy the classics within the franchise itself. If you haven't watched Alien in 40 years, it's time to watch it again. If you haven't watched it in a year, it's time to watch it again. Go ahead and pick up the Blu-ray, do some hard copy. Do not give everything to the cloud. That way we can avoid the problems that Rose was talking about. But regardless, you hear me, go watch Alien again. Fuck, this movie's just as good again as it was in 79. And it really does hold up to the remastering. It still looks just as rich because of the practical effects and none of the CGI and all this. It's just gorgeous. Go watch. Do yourself the favor and watch a great film and get scared again and get excited again. So Alien, can't recommend it enough. 1979. What a great. Actually, I think there's a couple more days. So if you hear this on release day, you might have a chance to still see it in theaters. I couldn't recommend that enough. They gave a great intro to it and everything too. So get a little early there to the film. But that's it for this week's Sovereign Tech. A lot of stuff that we covered here. A lot of culmination of the past 8 years. And wow, happy 40th to one of my favorite franchises and, well, frankly, one of my favorite movies of all time, that being Alien. Don't forget, if you want to get more of this kind of stuff, just sign up for Zomia 1 for the Zomia 1 Underground. Go to Zomia1.com and get your hookup there. Thank you to all the sponsors of Sovereign Tech. In fact, we might have some more coming on board. I'm very excited about that. So I will see all of you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com. That's SOVRYN tech.com. And connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.